Today I'm going to be trying out one of these. Now this might be the only art material that will actually improve your work. It's called the proportional divider, and essentially it's a measuring tool. This is actually an art tool that has been used by artists for hundreds of years, but I feel like it is one of the lesser known materials. There are a few different looking ones, but they all work similarly. This one, and as with most of them, it has like a screw in the middle or some sort of pivoting device in between them, and then you have this compass looking contraption. So there are two ends on each end, and then you can sort of move it back and forth like so. And what this helps you with is proportion, as the name would suggest. And since the main purpose of this tool is to assist you in accurately portraying proportion, I figured there was no better test of accurate proportion than doing a portrait. So we're keeping things timely, doing a Squid Game portrait, and yeah, I guess let's put this tool to the test and see if I feel like it actually improves my drawing experience. So the idea with this is that you don't actually have to copy it like 1-to-1 scale. That is what this little knob changes, is the difference between the scales. So what I'm going to do first is actually figure out how large I want the portrait to vaguely be on my actual canvas, or in this case, a sketchbook. So I think I'm just going to do like a rough sort of marking, just, you know, I don't want to like draw too much myself because I want to, you know, use the actual tool. But I think I'm just going to do like a rough like center line of the face down, just so that we have something to work off of. And also so I know where I want this portrait to be on the actual paper. I'm going to use this mark down here as the base chin line, but because her hair is kind of cut off at the top here, I think this point is actually going to be this point in her hair. Like where her bangs are coming off, you can see the lighter point of the scalp. So I think that's going to be what I'm going to use that point as like the baseline for. So if we look at that, I'm going to then loosen this so that we can get the scale. I have no idea which end you're supposed to use and or if it matters. So this is great. I think there is about where I need it. Again, I'm not like super determined for that to be the scale, but I think, you know, looking at this, if you're looking at the point of the tool from chin to that point compared to my points here, I'd say that's pretty close. So just so that it is in scale, I'm going to just make some fine tuning of these markings just so that it is actually in scale with how this tool is set up. I'm sure the trick to this tool is going to be figuring out and understanding how to give yourself like almost coordinates for whatever it is you're drawing. So I think for ease, I'm going to go with the points along my center line, since that's what we're sort of working on at the moment. So I'm going to go between that point in the forehead and the edge of the nose. Of course, the portrait is on a bit of an angle, which I'm sure I'll figure out to make sure that that angle is accurately captured. There to there, that's roughly where the base of the nose should be going. Open this up a bit more. We can get to where about the top lip should be going in relation to everything. Do another line. I'm gonna do the center lip in between the upper and bottom lips. I'm gonna do that right about there. And then finally the bottom of the lower lip. It's right about there. I'm very used to doing portraits, so I kind of know how to break down the face into easier segments, I guess you could say. I realized as I was working at putting in more definitive points that I really needed a more concrete baseline to use to figure out where all of these points needed to go in relative space. Probably should have looked at creating like a fake center line on this, which I'm gonna do right now. If I have a ruler around, that would help. Now obviously if you weren't using a picture and you were using this on like an actual subject, you're not going to be able to draw a line across their face. So that might be a bit of cheating, but just for the purpose of this video and figuring sort of the relationship between all of the points out, that's what we're going to work with. I just continued on measuring and creating points on my little graph that I was sort of creating here, but something that I noticed that started happening pretty quickly is the thing actually became more loose and it actually started to lose the scale. Now this might be something that is more of an issue with the type of proportional divider that I have, because it's just completely loose and the mechanism pivots on a screw that, you know, moves up and down to wherever you want it to. I know there are ones that have more definitive points on them, and so I'm sure that's not necessarily an issue with those, but it is something to like watch for and keep in mind, since you are basically relying on this tool to keep everything in the right scale, and obviously if that accidentally changes, then you're going to inadvertently start creating points at the wrong scale, throwing your entire drawing off. But other than that, this tool is obviously very simple to use. I think the most complex part and the biggest learning curve will be understanding where to measure basically and how to place your points. This is the first time that I'm using this, so I'm not sure if in the future I will do it differently, but I'm essentially approaching the drawing almost the same way that I would if I was like freehanding it. It's just instead of freehanding the measurements and points, I am using this tool to measure them out instead. Going back to what I was mentioning with the tool losing a scale on me, you really do need to like be careful with where you're putting your points, because I know I at least was falling into the rhythm, or I guess the expectation that those points are where they should be, and if they're not in the right place obviously, and that is your mentality, you could inadvertently start to treat those points as 100% accurate even if they aren't actually, if that makes sense. Like obviously the tool is measuring the distances between whatever 2 points you are looking at, but if you do not put those points on the page in the right position, then it's still going to be wrong no matter how accurate those 2 points are. So for instance, the relationship between the nose and the mouth, I could obviously very easily skew the mouth over to one side too much, and even if it is drawn in proportion to everything else, it might not be drawn in relation to the nose accurately. Initially when I started using it, I felt that it was a bit more of a hindrance than a help. I think that was really just down to not being used to having this tool and measuring all of these points out constantly, but after using it, I definitely could see that it was actually being helpful, and it probably did cut down my drawing time. This still took me like roughly an hour to get all of these points down, but I possibly was taking my time a little more since I was filming this and I didn't want to mess up on camera, but I was sort of struggling with wanting to just start drawing in the detail of the facial features, but then realizing that, you know, I probably should be measuring more points out before I go ahead and draw all of these things in more detail and then find out that it's actually inaccurate. And that's actually what I think ended up tripping me up the most on this drawing, was I was so focused on using the tool and finding these different points to try and measure to get the points then on the page that I was not really spending that much time making sure that all of the points were in relation to each other very well. So I just, for me, after looking back at this footage and seeing the finished drawing, there are definitely points that I could see like, oh, that angle is a bit off and it's a little skewed there, but overall I think this tool is really useful. The key to using a proportional divider effectively is definitely going to be understanding how to break down whatever it is you're drawing and knowing how to measure points and I guess create points to measure and then get those points in relation to all of the other points on your page. So this tool isn't necessarily going to magically fix all of your possible drawing issues, I guess. You are still going to need to understand how to break down the shapes, but it will definitely assist you in getting those measurements and proportions between objects more accurate. So in the future, for me personally, I could see myself using this tool when maybe I'm drawing and just things maybe aren't looking right, or I'm having issues with a particular, say, area on the portrait. Like maybe the eyes are looking a little funky, or just in general, I don't feel like the portrait is achieving the best likeness of whoever I'm drawing. So I could definitely see myself grabbing this tool then and just sort of checking things over and seeing maybe where I need to fix things, like maybe something's a little out of line or the eyes are too close together or something like that. So that is how I personally see myself using this in the future. Obviously, I'm going to work on getting more natural at using it because practice, I'm sure, makes perfect with this, and just getting more into the swing of using the tool when drawing. This was my first time, and you know, for a first shot at using a tool that I'd never used before, I think overall the artwork turned out pretty decent, but I'm not sure realistically, for me at least, if it makes the most sense to be using this tool for every single measurement point on a face, or you know, whatever it is I'm drawing, but I tend to be drawing portraits, so chances are I'd be using this on a face. But yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on proportional dividers, if you're someone that's used one before, or if you're, you know, someone that uses one all of the time in your work. Any tips that you might have for me, because I'm sure I'm doing something wrong like an absolute idiot that is now being permanently captured and shared on the internet. Or if you're on the complete opposite end of the spectrum and you hadn't even heard of this tool until today, are you someone that's now interested in trying one out and seeing if it will improve your drawing in some way? I would love to know that as well. To finish this drawing off, I decided to just do some quick shading, like really emphasis on the quick. I just thought that it really could have used some dimension a lot of the time, even no matter how accurate your proportions are, just there not being any dimension to a drawing can still just make things look really weird. So wanted to add a bit of dimension, but it was really quick, and in the future I might actually color this piece in, because that was sort of what I was thinking about doing before, but for now it's going to stay as a black and white, just quick pencil drawing with shading. And here's how the finished sketch turned out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.